Annyeonghaseyo, this is meowmurai. Let's continue our game of Despera Drops running on Nintendo Switch 2.
真実を見つけに行くよ。
では参りましょうか。
これでいいかな。
ダメだ。自分をギャンブルの賭けの対象にするなんて絶対許さないから。僕は絶対反対だよ。
I could feel the genuine fury in his voice. His glare was so piercing that it was almost scary, and he tightened his grip on my arm, refusing to release me.
ラミ君、痛いよ。
あ、
Ram hurriedly let go, flinging himself away.
ごめん。
He stood there motionlessly. He was clearly shaken.
大丈夫。
とにかく自分を物みたいにかけるなんて絶対にダメだ。こんなカジノ出てってやる。
Ram headed to the entrance, urging me to follow him, but the owner and the guard stood in his way.
おっと、そいつはダメだ。君はさっき倒したチップの弁償できるのかね。銀髪の彼はグラスを割ってくれた。この話があろうとなかろうとね。どちらにしろ、有り金のない君たちをただで返すわけにはいかないんだよ。さて、早速賭けを始めようじゃないか。どうする？ブラックジャックにポーカー、ルーレットにバカラと好きなものを選ぶといい。最後に勝つのは私だがな。
くそ。なら絶対勝ってやる。あんたみたいな汚い大人に負けるもんか。
Ram clasped his hands together, frowning determinedly. Hamiel walked up next to him. For a split second, Hamiel whispered something into Ram's ear. Then he pulled away and spread out his hands theatrically.
それじゃあポーカーにしようか。ただしドローポーカーにしてくれよ。またディーラーと他の客が結託されたら困るからな。
なんだと？変な言いがかりよ。まあいい。それで話は決まったな。ではルールだが、ちまちまと小銭をかけられてつまらん逃げ方をされても興ざめだ。1ゲームの参加料は1000ユーロとし、それで10ゲームを行ってもらう。最終的に貸した1万ユーロを返せなければ。
ああ、その時はこの女をくれてやるよ。
Hamiel lit a cigarette as he readily accepted the conditions. His speech was rough and harsh. Even though I was the one who made the proposal, I still felt uneasy after hearing him.
これで退路は断たれたか。こうなっては覚悟を決めるしかあるまい。
With that, the games began with me on the line. Hamiel was our contestant. He made himself at home, lounging on a chair and taking puffs from his cigarette, lazily pushing forward a deck of cards. Giba and Ash stood behind him. Their towering bills had an intimidating effect, the other guests looking daunted. A select few, however, smirked as if their victory was set in stone, their conceited gazes bright.
さてと、お手柔らかに頼むぜ。
Without a shred of reluctance, Hamiel flung 1,000 euros worth of chips onto the table. The dealer dealt everyone their cards, kicking off the game. But the moment Hamiel saw his hand, he folded. His entry fee of 1,000 euros was gone. Huh? Wait, we've already lost 1,000 euros just like that? Just like that, over 130,000 yen went down the drain. The insanity of it threw off my senses of money.
おいおい、いきなり弱腰じゃないか。
確実に勝てる時じゃないとな。
Hamiel continued the game in a dispassionate manner, wearing his poker face. Whether his hand be good or bad, none of it showed in his expression.
レイズ。
Little by little, Hamiel stacked his chips. I could see his conservative playstyle chipped away at the patience of the players around him.
おい、なんだこりゃ。全然盛り上がらないじゃねえか。
サリーもやる。
お前はダメだ。
僕も参加したいんですが、掛け金の代わりに 爆薬を作るというのはどうですかね。家を半壊させられるやつ。
爆薬？んな物騒なもん作れんのかよ。怖えな、最近のインテリボーイは。
Even while they chatted idly, the number of players in the game gradually increased. By the final and 10th game, the pool of chips was a lofty mountain.
はあ、これで最終ゲームですか。もし今誰かが勝ったら大変なことになりますね。仕掛けるなら今じゃね。
ああ、だがまさかこんな時に勝つやつはさすがに。
Showered with the attention of everyone in the casino, Hamiel abruptly chuckled.
オールインだ。
おいおい、いいのか？
ああ、もちろんさ。
The other casino guests exchanged panicked looks. However, the dealer and one lone player maintained their unruffled attitudes.
私もオールインだ。
Then, all the players revealed their hands. 2 pairs, 3 of a kind, flush. Then,
ロイヤルストレートフラッシュだ。
everyone was rendered speechless at Hamiel's hand. Within the pin-drop silence, only Hamiel smiled languidly.
これ以上の手はないだろう。俺の勝ちだ。
When Hamiel placed his cards on the table, the dealer snapped back to the present with a gasp.
イカ様だ！エースがそっちの手にあるはずは。
何？エースを配らないようにしてたってわけ？
いや、そういうわけでは。
In disbelief, the dealer turned over the card near his hand. It was a 5 of hearts.
そんな、バカな。私は確か
で、僕たちの勝ちじゃないの？イカ様してないディーラーさん？
Rom made a dig at him, and the dealer moved the huge pile of chips with resignation. We didn't just match the 10,000 we'd started with. We'd amassed over 30,000 euros. There was plenty to spare even after we returned the starting loan. Faced with such a fortune, the casino interior burst into activity.
すげえ、こんな大勝ち初めて見たぜ。
へへ、さすがハミエル。
We won. My knees buckled and I slumped into a chair. The owner's chagrined voice rang out.
くそ、お前たちが勝つはずがない。今のはイカ様じゃないのか？
おいおい、これだけ大勢が見てる中でイカ様できるはずないだろう。幸運の女神が微笑んでくれたのさ。
ああ、特に不正があった様子もなかった。これが彼の実力というわけだろう。
He promptly converted the chips into cash. We were able to obtain approximately 20,000 euros after deducting the 10,000 we'd started out with. It was risky for one person to carry it all, so we split it evenly. With the weight of the bills in my pocket, I felt both relief and a crushing pressure. 20,000 euros was enough to purchase a car. It was no exaggeration to call it a small fortune.
やったー！これで美味しいご飯食べられるじゃん。
ああ、ようやく懐が温かくなった。今晩はこれで帰るぞ。
To ward off any assaults, we grouped together and made our way to the exit. That was when slow clapping resounded in the casino.
いやー、こりゃ見事だね。これぞ神業のイカ様ってやつだ。
イカ様？見てただろ？完全な実力だ。トランプにだって細工はない。確かめてみたらどうだ？
そうだな。細工はない。完全にフィジカルに頼ったイカ様だよ。こんなの見たこともない。おっと、一本いただくよ。
The man picked up one of Hamiel's cigarettes, which was left scattered on the table, bringing it to his mouth and slowly lighting it.
おいこら、誰がやるって言ったよ。
俺はこの銘柄しか吸わないんだ。君とは趣味が合いそうだね。
The man took a long drag and then pointed at Rom.
サポート役は君だろ？いや、素早いね。配ってるタイミングで誰にも気づかれないようにいいカードを取っちまうんだからな。
取った？
しかも合図の出し方も完璧だったね。帽子の彼も人の目を欺く術ってのをよく心得ている。メガネの彼は爆弾の話なんてして人の注目をうまく集めた。しかもでかい男たちでしっかりと資格まで作ってる。 こんな連携でのイカ様は初めて見たよ。君たちなかなかにいいチームみたいじゃないか。いや、実に素晴らしい。
As he spoke, the stranger held his phone up high. On his screen were a series of photographs depicting the moment Ram swiped the card. Not a second later, mayhem broke out.
てめえら、やっぱりイカ様じゃねえか。逃がすな。絶対に捕らえて金と女を取り返せ。
くそ、結局こうなるのかよ。
The guards came for us, but Demon Ash sent them flying one after another. Despite our attempt, a brawl began after all, and the casino fell into pure chaos.
たく、俺は武闘派じゃないんだがね。
Beer bottles flew through the air, their shattering highlighted by the sounds of fists meeting flesh. Within the mayhem, Gib turned to face me and Sally.
お前たちは先に行け。ここにいても邪魔だ。
はい、サリー行くよ。もうサリーの髪ぐちゃぐちゃだよ。
We exploited the opening Gib created by knocking down a guard and dashing to the stairway at the entrance. Together with Sally, I somehow managed to break out of the casino. July 17, 2028, 2304, back alley. However,
俺たちの金を返せ。おい、こら待て。
some of the casino guests had followed us, hoping to steal the money back from us easier targets. I listened carefully to the sound of our pursuers' footsteps as I turned left and right, navigating the sparse night streets. I hadn't even had time to grab hold of Sally's hand. I had no idea whether she was still behind me. But if I remember right, if I press on for about 200 more meters, I should arrive at the condo. The question was, would I be able to shake off these pursuers before then? When I looked back to check, I stumbled in shock. Sally really wasn't there. I'd been so absorbed in getting away that I'd lost her completely. But I could hear voices and footsteps close behind me. I couldn't retrace my steps to reunite with her. But I was at my limit, out of breath and unable to run on. Pressing down on my aching lungs, I desperately tried to run forward even as I staggered. Suddenly, the headlights of a van in front of me lit up.
ねえ、そこの子、大丈夫？暴漢に追われてるならこっちに来なさい。車に乗せてあげる。
It was a God-sent offer of salvation. I wasn't able to respond to her properly. I just clambered into the van as fast as I could. Oh, seems like that was a mistake, huh? As I made my way into the rear streets, the headlights switched off. Obviously, oblivious to my hiding place, the men ran past. After ensuring that they'd passed by, I finally bowed gratefully to the woman next to me.
ありがとうございました。
I voiced my gratitude as I raised my head. The face that entered my vision, however, took my breath away once again. The woman in the van had a face that I'd seen on TV countless times. She was Rebecca Russo, the reporter from Canal Zero.
はーい、やっと見つけたわよ、天峰さん。
She knew my name. Of course she did. She was the one who'd read out the news about the wanted list. No way. My heart dropped. I'd successfully escaped the foxes, but I stepped right into the tiger's territory. Out of the frying pan and into the fire described this perfectly. The others weren't here with me. I couldn't talk my way out like Hamiel. I couldn't wriggle out slyly like Ram. I couldn't do anything. I froze, color draining from my face. To my surprise, Rebecca giggled.
何？そんなに私のことが怖い？安心して。別にあなたを捕まえようってつもりじゃないから。え？私はただ、あなたに取材したいだけなの。真実ってものを報道するためにね。
When she winked, she gave me the exact same feel as the Rebecca I always saw on TV. Her reassuring smile was charming, but I couldn't trust her blindly. She was a reporter after all. The media learning the whereabouts of a wanted criminal would only lead to my ruin.
すみません。何を言ってるのかわかりません。きっと人違いです。
I didn't honestly think I'd deceive her, but it was the only thing I could think of to say. My top priority was getting out of this van, running away so that she would never discover the condo, and reporting this to the others.
さっきは助けてくださりありがとうございました。家に帰らないと父が心配するので。
I bowed before I attempted to get out of the van, but the door was locked. It didn't open on first try. And so I went to unlock it, but the van started moving before I could. Someone else was at the driver's seat. Now that the van was moving, I couldn't get out. Rebecca didn't look phased at all as she watched me.
ごめんなさいね。今あなたに逃げられるわけにはいかないの。私は警察の情報に不満があるのよ。だから真実を知りたい。プロのキャスターとしてね。それに逃げても無駄よ。あなたの腕にあるそれ。発信機がついているもの。
I looked at her in shock. She took out a device from her pocket that looked like a smartphone and showed me the screen. On display was a map of Milan. A handful of red dots were on it, all of them moving in real time.
これは
発信機の受信装置ってところかしら。そしてこの赤い点があなたたちの居場所よ。ここにいるのは多分あのサリーって子ね。
Though I wanted to say she was bluffing, judging by the map, 3 of the dots were still in the unlicensed casino. Another group of dots were moving toward the same destination, the condo that served as our hideout.
なんで
Why was there such a device? Why did Rebecca have this tracker? My eyes flicked between her and the screen, and she grinned with pride.
この受信装置は高速道路の事故現場近くで、私の相棒が電子式のキーと一緒に拾ったのよ。最初はこれが何かわからなかったのだけどね。スイッチを入れたら画面に赤い点が7つ。そして護送車から逃亡したのも7人。その意味に気づくのに時間はかからなかったわ。だから逃げても無駄なの。どこにいてもあなたのいる場所が私にはわかるんだから。
I never expected that there was such a mechanism planted in the handcuffs we still wore. Then again, they were made with an especially strong metal, armed with digital locks that even the police didn't use. We should have guessed.
おっと、3人がここで止まったわね。今朝いた場所と同じ。やっぱりここが隠れ家ね。ついでだから送るわ。
Rebecca pointed to one spot on Milan's map, and she suspected it was the address of our condo. There was no escape. My life on the run was going to end here. Despair crushed me under its weight.
ってちょっと、そんな顔しないでよ。私がいじめてるみたいじゃない。私は警察にあなたたちを通報するつもりでここへ来たんじゃないわ。ただインタビューをしたいだけなのよ。
インタビュー
ええ。警察の発表には不審な点が多すぎる。運転手が凶暴で殺されたっていう割に検視が行われていた気配もない。どう見てもあの爆発で死んだだけよ。それを警察は隠してるわ。さらに護送車には銃痕もあった。外からのね。つまりあの車は外から狙撃されたのよ。もちろんあなたたちのお仲間が助けようとしたって線も考えたわ。でもあなたたちの中に組織にいた犯罪者は一人もいなかった。少し調べればすぐにわかることよ。一匹狼の寄せ集めだなんてことはね。だいたいこの一連の流れで分かったけれど、こんな無防備で普通の女の子に殺人なんてできるはずないわ。もちろんだから私は当の本人であるあなたたちに取材をしに来たの。だいたいこの一連の流れで分かったけれど、こんな無防備で普通の女の子に殺人なんてできるはずないわ。もちろんこれはただの勘だけど、私の勘よく当たるのよ。
When she spoke, Rebecca's face was earnest and solemn. She didn't seem like she was lying in the slightest.
捕まった経緯や警察の対応、犯罪の詳細を話してくれるなら手錠のキーを渡してあげる。どう？悪い取引じゃないと思うけれど。
Should I tell her? If possible, I wanted to confide in her about everything. I wanted to trust her and have her tell everyone I wasn't a murderer. I wanted her help. But then the faces of my fugitive companions appeared in my mind. They didn't trust anyone. Every one of them kept their guard up around me and everyone. Would they ever be willing to open up to Rebecca? No, they wouldn't go along with this. Or perhaps they would pretend to go along while calculating how they could use it to their advantage. I didn't have the right to make such a significant decision by myself. Taking a deep breath, I looked into Rebecca's eyes.
少し考えさせてください。
まあ、あなた一人じゃ決められないわよね。OK、わかったわ。一晩だけ猶予をあげる。ちょうど着いたみたいね。じゃあ、明日の正午、ルオーモ広場で待ってるわ。いい返事を期待しているわよ。
Rebecca unlocked the van. Deciding that it was safe to get out, I opened the door. After a few steps, I turned back. Rebecca was waving at me, the receiver in her hand.
もちろん、逃げても無駄だから。そう彼らにも伝えてちょうだい。
はい。
Seeing my nod, Rebecca instructed the driver to drive away. Until the van disappeared into the distance, I didn't take my eyes off it even once. July 17, 2028, 2337. Condo living room. When I returned to the condo, I found that everyone else had made it back ahead of me.
ミカ、よかった。無事だったんだ。
最初に逃げたはずなのにいないから心配していた。大丈夫か？
やれやれ、よかった。通報して一人逃げたんじゃないかと疑いかけてたところだったよ。
だからサリー言ったでしょ、お姉ちゃんがそんなことするはずないって。
いやー、あのオーナーに捕まったわけじゃないようでよかったです。
They all actually seemed worried about me. Frankly, I suspected that they'd all fight now that we'd obtained money and then vanish without a trace. I felt guilty about those thoughts too.
いっぱいご飯買ってきたんだよ。お姉ちゃんも食べるでしょ。
I gazed at the table. There was a pile of hamburgers and fries. They must have bought it from an all-night fast food place. I'd gone without food for a while and my hunger suddenly hit me. But there was something I had to report to everyone first.
何かあったのか？
Seeing me unmoving, Ash placed his soda on the table. I looked at each person in turn and nodded.
はい。それが。
I summarized my conversation with Rebecca as best I could. My heart fell, watching their expressions darken.
発信機だと？
マジかよ。俺たちは犬か何かか？そんなもんまで仕込んでいたとはな。大層なブレスレットじゃないか。
Everyone raised the remains of their handcuffs around their wrists.
手錠に追跡システムを仕込むとは。そんなものを使う連中が相手とは。骨が折れるな。
レベッカさんは護送車に狙撃された痕跡があったと言ってましたし、もし彼らが私たちの居場所を知ったら。
少なくとも窓際には立たない方がいいだろうな。
Camu. Camu, who just so happened to be standing next to a window, frantically pulled the curtains and tripped over himself as he ran back to the middle of the room.
だが、まだそいつらは俺らを見つけていない。狙撃も襲撃も今のところなかった。昼間の情報収集の間もな。
ああ。つまり、レベッカが拾った受信装置がなければ、我々を狙ったその誰かも居場所を特定できないのだろ
う。But, I mean, this visual novel is a lot more intriguing than I thought it would be. I mean, since it's focused, I mean, for women, you know, since you're a girl romancing, or potentially romancing a bunch of dudes, well, I guess there's Sally too, but I have a feeling that she's not who she says she is. I didn't think there would be this much plot. But, yeah, this is cool. It's very intriguing.
けど、そんな大層な追跡装置の受信装置が一つってことはないだろう。いつレベッカ以外に情報が漏れてもおかしくない。
そうだな。すでに他の報道陣に共有されている可能性もあるし。となると。
もしくは、車を襲った奴らに脅されて、受信装置を手放すか。
それって、サリーたちが手錠を外すまでずーっと安全じゃないってこと？
早急にこいつを外す必要が出てきたな。
でもどうすんの？どんな工具でも外せなかったじゃん。
ああ、破壊するのは無理だ。
爆弾魔はこいつをピンポイントに壊せる爆弾でも作れないのか？
作れなくもないですが、手も一緒に吹き飛びますね。
そりゃピンポイントって言わないだろ。
怖っ！サリーは絶対そんなのやらないから。
やはり手錠を外すには解除キーを手に入れるしか方法はないようだな。レベッカは一緒に電子キーも拾ったと言ったのだな。
それって絶対にこの手錠の鍵だよな。じゃあ盗み出す？
Ram leaned forward eagerly, excited to show off his expertise. Stealing, breaking, and entering, both were undeniable crimes. But with my safety at risk, I didn't have the luxury of lamenting it.
問題はレベッカ・ロッソがどこに潜伏しているかだが。
彼女の車のナンバーを覚えてきました。
I jotted down the number I'd seen onto a piece of paper. Ram whistled, impressed.
なになに？仕事できるじゃん。
ようやく自覚ができたみたいじゃないか。こりゃありがたいね。逃亡者集団に博愛主義はいらないからな。
True, I'd stared at the van earlier until it was out of sight to memorize the license plate. I must have known subconsciously that this would happen. But having him pointed out hurt like salt in a cut, telling me that my conscience hadn't yet been snuffed out. Even now I couldn't decide. Was staying true to my values better, or should I resign myself to a life of crime? The only thing I wouldn't do was make the excuse that someone else had coerced me. Ash was looking in my direction, and I stared back in silence.
しかしナンバーが分かったところでどうする？ミラノの街に車など山ほどあるが。
それだけ分かれば十分。ミラノの監視カメラのシステムをハッキングしてすぐ追いかけられるよ。
She flipped open her laptop and immediately dove into her investigation. It only took her a few minutes to find our target.
あった。この建物の駐車場に入ってる。
おいおい、大人気のキャスター様の割には随分と庶民的なホテルじゃないか。
あまり贅沢をしそうなイメージはありませんから、納得といえば納得ですね。
この時間だと彼女はすでに部屋にいるだろうな。
部屋に人がいる状態で盗みはできるか？
まあ、やったことないとは言わないけどさ、さすがにいない方が楽だよ。部屋の中のどこに隠してるかだってわからないし。途中で目を覚まされて人呼ばれたらアウトだ。あんまりおすすめはできないかな。
では、明日出かけるのを待ちますか？
ああ、確かにそうですね。明日正午にはドゥオーモ広場へ来ているはずですし、そのタイミングを狙った方が。
これ早く取っちゃいたいし、今晩やっちゃおうよ。
私も急いだ方がいいと思う。明日の待ち合わせの際、彼女も警戒してホテルに置いておくような真似もしないはずだ。
ん？となると、待ち合わせに持ってくるというわけですか？
いや、そんなことはしないだろう。我々との交渉時に身の安全を確保するために、遠くへ鍵を郵送するという可能性もある。
送った先を知りたくば話せというやつですか？
詐欺師がよくやる手口だよ。あのキャスターならやりかねないな。
となると、今晩の決行はずらせないな。
Tonight. I was still haggard from the stir in the casino, but it seemed the rest was far from reach.
しかし今晩となると、彼女が寝ている隙を狙うことになるのか。
ちょっと待ってね。今ホテルのセキュリティに忍び込むから。
She hummed a tune as she speedily navigated the hotel's network system. Soon the display on her laptop showed Rebecca entering her room.
あ、わかった。この507号室だよ。
最上階の一番端っこか。部屋の位置はいいんだけど、ちょっとやりにくいな。
どういうこと？
建物が通りに面してるからね。夜とはいえ、ここじゃ人目につきすぎて、壁をよじ登って窓からは入れないよ。
となると、フロントからの突破か。
それは危険じゃないですか？
そうだな。ホテルのフロントに顔を見られるのはリスクだ。奴らはニュースをよく見ているからな。
まあ、わざわざ正面から攻めて顔を晒す必要はねえな。 見取り図はないのか？
そう、せかさないでよ。サリーまだポテト食べてるんだから。
Sally snacked on the fries left on the table as she typed away. A while later, digital blueprints appeared on the screen.
なるほどね。これなら中に入っちゃえば、あとは楽勝かな。問題はどこから入るかだけど。
ここの非常階段を使うのはどうだ？
まあいけなくはないと思うけど、踏み台が必要かな。
どんな踏み台だ？
ジブみたいな背丈の踏み台かな。
だとよ、旦那。
なんだ？
いい踏み台になってやれって話だ。じゃ、お二人さん、頼んだぜ。
何？僕ら二人で行けって言うの？
は？忍び込むのはお前だけでいいだろう。ジブの旦那にコソ泥の真似ができるとも思えないし、俺らがいたところで大怪盗様のいい足手まといだ。
いや、忍び込んで盗むのは僕でもいいけど、レベッカが部屋にいいんだろ？彼女の気を引くおとりが欲しいよ。カミュとかあたりでさ。僕ですか？ちょっと変装すればバレなくない？見た感じはどこにでもいる普通の学生って感じだし、ハミエルは詐欺師っぽいから無理だけど。
じゃあその本物から忠告してやろう。いくら変装しても指名手配犯が注意を引くのは確実にまずい。ターゲットに接触するようなおとりはなしだ。
ああ、じゃあホテルの外で爆発を起こすのはどうですか？
いや、大事件すぎるだろ。すぐに警察や消防車が来ちまうぜ。
音が出るだけのものならどうだ？ちょっとした騒ぎになる程度だとは思うが。
爆竹的なものですか？それならすぐに作れますよ。
いいか、音が出るだけだぞ。本当に爆発騒ぎになったら面倒だ。
無論心得ております。お任せください。
でも爆発の音でレベッカさんの気を引いたとして、その隙に盗み出すなんて可能なんですか？
気を引ければそれでいい。あとは部屋の外におびき出せばいいからな。相手はあの大物政治家の汚職事件にも突撃取材する体当たりキャスター。いや、番組ディレクターのレベッカ・ロッソだろ？なら、あいつが食いつきそうなスキャンダルを近くで起こせば、すぐにスクープだっつって部屋から飛んでいくと思うぜ。
スキャンダルを起こす？どうやるんですか？
手っ取り早い方法といえば、彼女の泊まっているホテルの近くで政治家が不倫中だって情報を SNS にばらまくとかだな。
Hamiel then showed us his phone, which had a photo of a famous Italian politician huddling intimately with an actress. There wasn't any background, though. It only featured the cutout pair.
何これ？
Upon closer inspection, there was something off about the points where the pair overlapped. The angle of the lighting felt kind of unnatural.
まさかこれって加工ですか？
そう、加工だよ。で、この監視カメラの画像を利用して、向かいのホテルの入り口を撮影して。
ちょっと勝手にスクショ撮らないでよ。
Hamiel took a screenshot on Sally's laptop before forwarding the image to his phone. A bit later, Hamiel showed us his phone again, now with a photo of the famous politician walking into the hotel with the actress.
こんなもんだ。
今のスマホはこんなことまでできるのか。
もう職業変えた方が良くない？
監視カメラの画質が未だに悪いおかげでできる芸当さ。こいつをまず SNS に投稿する。で、レベッカのアカウントにリプライでも送れば完璧さ。
でもこれを SNS に投稿するなんてさすがにやりすぎじゃ。印刷した写真をドアの隙間に入れるとかじゃダメですか？
釣りをするときお前は針をわざわざ魚に教えるか？かえって怪しまれるだろう。だいたいこの政治家は実際不倫の常連だ。もみ消しちゃいるけどな。
そういえばそうだったな。
ですが SNS 投稿に気づいてくれるでしょうか？もし寝ていたらって 爆竹の音で目を覚ますとは思いますが。
ああ、起きたらまずはどこで爆発があったのか窓の外を見るだろうな。そのタイミングで窓の下で大声で噂話をしてやればいい。SNS の投稿見たか？ジーノの不倫現場がこのホテルらしいぜってな。その役回りお前がやってもいいんだぜ。観光客にお似合いの仕事じゃないか。
私がですか？
いや、彼女はダメだ。一度レベッカと話をしている。声でバレるだろう。
やっぱそこはハミエルとカミュがいいんじゃね？いかにもゴシップとか話してそうじゃん。
いや、俺はもう疲れてるんだ。あんだけのイカサマ博打をやってやったんだ。今日はもう閉店だよ。
そうか。では、私とアッシュか。
この真面目なおじさんと無口な兄貴が政治家の不倫なんてゴシップ話す？学芸会になっちゃうよ。
That's a good point. No need to say anything more, as all eyes drifted to Hamiel.
わかったよ。俺とカミュでやりゃいいんだろ。噂を流すっていう役をな。
え？僕は爆竹係では。
そいつはアッシュでもできるだろ。カミュじゃ爆竹鳴らした後に挙動不審で通報されそうだ。
それはそうかもしれないな。アッシュ、頼めるか。
ああ。
では、陽動はアッシュに。レベッカを部屋からおびき出すのはハミエルとカミュ。私は踏み台で、ラミーが非常階段から侵入する。その後アッシュはホテル近くまで戻ってきて、ラミーの逃走を手伝ってくれ。ラミーが盗みを終えて出てきたところで捕まったら元も子もない。バイクのサイドカーに彼を乗せろ。いいな。
わかった。
俺らの送迎はなしか。
それぐらい自分たちでやってくれ。逃げるのはお手の物だろう。
そこのお嬢さん方は休息か。羨ましい限りだよ。
いえ、私は皆さんが人に見つからないようこの監視カメラを確認しています。危険があればすぐに連絡します。
We mustn't let anyone see us, not even a glimpse. At the same time, I also planned on keeping watch so no one would start any unnecessary scuffles or theft.
お、じゃあ通話つなげっぱにしといてイヤホン越しに指示してくれる感じ？おお、それはいかにも秘密組織らしいですね。素晴らしい。
監視カメラを見ながらのオペレーションか。それはいいな。確実性が上がる。ではホテルと周辺のカメラを映せるか。
はいはい。入り口と裏口と廊下と、ついでに向かいの建物の監視カメラも借りてと。
Sally efficiently fetched the footage of the security cameras in the hotel and displayed them one after another on the screen. With a flourish, he pressed the enter key, and all the camera's feeds of the hotels were displayed simultaneously on the laptop screen.
こりゃ便利だな。
これ、お姉ちゃんのスマホでも見れるようにしたから。サリーのパソコンはハッキングに使うから、お姉ちゃんは自分のスマホの画面を見てね。
わかった。
でも結構数あるけど大丈夫？全部見るの大変そうだけど。
頑張ります。
じゃあみんなの連絡先交換しよう。作戦用のグループ作るから、それで通話するよ。
はあ、ついにガキどもお友達登録か。できればやらないままおさらばしたかったんだけどな。
だが連絡先を知っておいた方が何かと都合はいいだろう。
And so, all of us finally traded contact information. As I saw the names flooding my screen one after another, I felt an indescribable anxiety.
では神が爆竹を作り終えたら、すぐに作戦に移るぞ。
おお！
That's a real caper. July 18th, 2028. 12:27. Or 27 past midnight. Thus began our mission to steal the key to our handcuffs from Rebecca's hotel room. Camus had already finished the firecrackers, and as we just discussed, everyone went to their designated positions in the city. As I waited for everyone to get to their starting lines, I finally managed to catch my breath.
お姉ちゃん、ハンバーガー食べないの？ご飯食べないと元気出ないよ。
もらうね。
I dug into the cold burgers left on the table and had a swift dinner. Though I should have felt hungry, my stress levels were so high that I barely even registered the taste of the food. Before long, Sally's phone rang and our group call began.
こっちは着いたよ。いつでも大丈夫。
俺もだ。
僕たちの方も配置につきました。
We're really doing this.
もうお姉ちゃん、そんな心配そうな顔しなくても大丈夫だよ。みんなプロだし失敗しないって。
I must have looked awfully tense. Sally, who sat next to me, gave me a reassuring smile, but she was a little off about the cause of my worry. It wasn't fear of failure. I was shuddering with dread at myself, about to sully my hands with a serious, premeditated crime. But if I stayed in that state of mind, I'd only make a fatal mistake. I had to shake off my doubt and harden my resolve. I went over the plan in my head once again. Rom had already confirmed that Rebecca was in her hotel room, so first we needed to get her outside. First, I would guide Rom to the 5th floor of Rebecca's hotel while avoiding prying eyes. Then Ash would make a deafening noise elsewhere to draw Rebecca to her window. At that precise time, Hamill and Camus outside would gossip loudly to lure Rebecca out of her room completely. During that opening, Rom would infiltrate her room and steal the handcuff key. That was the gist of our strategy. It'd be okay, I told myself. It wasn't difficult. Other than the fact that it was a fully fledged organized heist. There's no point in thinking about that now. My only choice is to do what I can in the present. I felt like my guilty conscience would crush me at any time, but I forced it down and stared at the phone in my hand. My screen showed footage from several security cameras around Rebecca's hotel. It still amazed me how Sally was able to forward the feed to my phone.
おい、大丈夫か？
はい、すみません。作戦をもう一度確認していて。
そんな大した作戦でもないだろう。とはいえ、お前の指示に成功がかかってんだから、しっかりと指揮してくれよ。
No pressure. My hand trembled with nervousness. I had to compose myself somehow. I took a deep breath to steady my heart. First, I checked the emergency stairs, which would serve as Rom's infiltration route. The bottom left camera showed the stairwell door on the 5th floor. Cameras that were meant to prevent crime were now being used for trespassing.
どう？非常階段には人いなそう？もう行ってもいいかな？
I could see Rom asking from the other side of the camera. Oh. All clear. Hang on.
待って。今、5階の宿泊客が非常階段で電話してるから。
Not long later, the guests finished their call and walked back inside. Okay, I think it should be safe to go now.
非常階段には人はいないみたい。今なら大丈夫。
了解。ほらジブ、肩貸して。
ああ。だが、お前なら私を踏み台にしなくても登れるのではないのか？
いや、こういう連携プレイみたいなの、ちょっとやってみたかったんだよね。よっと。
Rom disappeared onto the emergency stairs. I could only hear Rom's breathing from the phone. There was no other noise whatsoever. I waited in silence. Not too long later, Rom appeared on the camera near the 5th floor emergency exit.
最上階に着いたよ。どう？中に誰かいる？
He already made it all the way up? There hadn't been any sound of someone climbing the metal stairs. Was this what it meant to be a pro? I shouldn't have been impressed, but I couldn't help feeling awed by his extraordinary dexterity.
で、中の様子はどんな感じ？
I snapped out of it and checked the footage on the hotel corridor camera. There's somebody there right now. Yeah.
待って。5階の廊下には今人がいる。
マジ？じゃあ、まだこのまま外で待機かな。
Ram held his breath and lurked on the fire escape. As soon as I saw the couple enter their room, I called out to Ram.
廊下にいた人たちは部屋に入った。今は廊下に誰もいない。
オーケー。
He opened the door soundlessly and slipped inside. Light on his feet, he advanced down the corridor. Soon he arrived at the door of our target's room. Ram surveyed the surroundings before pressing his ear against the door of the room next to Rebecca's. He was probably checking whether it was vacant.
よし。隣は空き部屋みたいだ。
He picked open the lock to the adjacent room and went inside.
じゃ、僕はこの空き部屋に隠れてるから、レベッカが出て行ったら教えて。
うん、わかった。
With this, I'd finished guiding Ram. The next stage of the plan was directing Rebecca's attention outside her windows. Let's see. The person in charge of setting off the firecracker was... That's Ash.
ラミー君がレベッカさんの隣の部屋に隠れました。アッシュさん、お願いします。
Well, they really want you to remember this stuff. It's good. I mean, it's actually kind of a lot of characters. I'm surprised I remember everybody's name.
わかった。
Moments after Ash's reply, I heard the boom of the firecrackers exploding. I guess that means they've got me hooked. Because I'm actually pretty invested in this now. A short while later, the camera outside the hotel showed the windows to Rebecca's room swinging open.
お、窓が開いた。カメラズームするね。
The footage focused on Rebecca, who was checking what was going on outside. We successfully grabbed her attention. I mean, she's there. We gotta start the diversion.
ハミエルさん、カミュさん、陽動をお願いします。
At my cue, the pair started their show without delay.
おいエディ、この SNS 見ろよ。議員のジーノがまた不倫してるみたいだぜ。
またか。ってあれ、この密会場所ってすぐ先のホテルじゃないのか？
おいおい、マジかよ。ってことは今行けば不倫相手の大物女優の顔を見れるってことか？
いやー、さすがに部屋に入ってるんじゃ。
でもあそこにいるのってもしかしてそうじゃね？おい、ちょっと見に行こうぜ。
The pair loudly chatted about the non-existent scandal as they walked past the entrance of the hotel. It seems that they'd caught Rebecca's interest. Before I knew it, she'd disappeared from her window. I snapped my focus to the corridor camera. The next moment, Rebecca charged out of her room. Her state of dress seemed rushed. Maybe she'd just woken up. She knocked hard on the door across from hers. A scrawny-looking guy walked out. After a brief exchange, the man retreated into his room before returning with a camera in hand. He must have seen Rebecca's side, or he must have been Rebecca's sidekick cameraman. I saw the pair speed walk down the corridor and enter the elevator. This was our chance to strike. Why am I going to tell them to hide? I guess she would go down there.
疲れたから少し休もっか。
I was about to say, there has to
こ
be
れで
multiple
OK？
pages. Visual novels tend to have like tons of pages for you to make saves like this. Now's your chance.
ラミー君、レベッカさんが部屋から出た。今がチャンス。
了解。
I watched Ram slink out of the room next door. He picked open the door to Rebecca's room in a flash before disappearing into its recesses. He'd been lightning fast, as if he'd used a skeleton key.
おい、ちょっとやばいぜ。レベッカのやつ、もう外に出てきてるじゃないか。なんで教えてくれないんだ？
Oh, okay.
次の目的地はどこにする？
I saved, I guess.
これで OK？
Okay, so those guys can hide.
レベッカさんがホテルの外に出ます。ハミエルさんとカミさんは見つからないように隠れてください。
あ、さすがは敏腕リポーター。行動が早いですね。
バカ、感心してねえでさっさと隠れるぞ。
Through the camera, I saw the pair hastily distance themselves from the entrance of the hotel. Just seconds after, Rebecca appeared. We had avoided disaster by a hair's breadth. Well, you know, maybe that wasn't legitimate on my part.
おっと、危ない危ない。もうちょっとで顔を見られるところだったぜ。
おお、あれが生レベッカ・ロッソ。有名人をこの目で見られるなんてラッキーですね。できればサインをもらいに行きたいのですが。
バカなこと言ってないで、すぐにこの場を離れ。
はい。
It seemed that the duo had managed to hide without issue. I could breathe easy for the time being.
ラミー君、レベッカさんがホテルから出て行った。今のうちにお願い。
了解。
I watched Rum slink out of the vacant room. In the blink of an eye, he picked open the door to Rebecca's room before disappearing into his recesses.
それじゃ宝探しを始めよっかな。
From here on out, it's all up to Rum. I waited silently so that I wouldn't disturb him. I didn't even hear a squeak for some time until...
うわ、この部屋の金庫ってコンピューターで制御されてる電子ロック式じゃん。こんなの爆弾でもなければ開けられないんだけど。
Ram's frustrated whisper told us the bad news. Gib, please back him up. Ram, keep at it and open it. Kamu, do you have any bombs?
カミさん、爆弾を持ってませんか？
アッシュ君に渡したのが最後です。もちろん時間があれば作れますが、ここはサリー君の出番ではないかと。
ホテルのセキュリティにハッキングして金庫のロックを解除すればいいんだね。
お願い。
任せて。
Oh, I wonder if that made a difference.
それじゃあハッキング開始するよ。
That was when Rebecca was captured by the hotel's exterior camera. It seemed she'd realized the gossip earlier was a sham. Dragging her feet, her whole body oozed disappointment.
ラミー君大変。レベッカさんが戻ってきた。
マジ？早すぎるよ。
SNS の画像がガセだってバレたみたいだな。まあ、あんな適当なコラージュじゃ無理もないけどよ。
Hamio grumbled. When I checked the post, there were countless scathing comments complaining that it was a groundless rumor and a heavily edited picture. Rebecca must have seen the post and realized the scandal was nothing but hogwash. At this rate, Ram and Rebecca were going to bump into each other inside her room. Sally stopped the elevator.
サリー、レベッカさんの乗ったエレベーターを止められない。
今なんて言ったの？
エレベーターを止められないかなって言ったんだけど、やっぱり無理だよね。
止められると思うけど、あれなんだろう、急に気持ち悪くなってきて。
Sally pressed hard on her chest and began groaning in agony. It was so sudden my mind went totally blank.
ちょっと、金庫の鍵はまだ開かないの？
それが、サリーが急に具合が悪くなって。これ以上のハッキングは無理みたい。手錠の鍵は諦めて、ラミー君は逃げて。
マジで？まあ、病気なら仕方ないけど。
大丈夫。もうちょっとで開けられるから。
She replied in a strained voice before resuming her work. She clearly wasn't in good shape, and her typing was slower than usual.
サリー、大丈夫？
大丈夫。こんなの楽勝だよ。
Before long, Rebecca arrived at the 5th floor via the elevator.
サリー、金庫のロック解除はどう？
もうちょっと。
行き先を決めてくれ。
これで OK？
レベッカさんがホテルの外に出ます。
バ
Oh, it's kind of hard to tell what to do.
ラミー、
了解。それじゃ。
I mean, I wouldn't be able to figure it out on the first try, certainly.
うわ。
Sally, can you do something about it?
サリー、どうにかならない？
ホテルのセキュリティにハッキングして金庫のロックを解除すればいいんだね。
お願い。
任せて。それじゃハッキング開始するよ。
That was when Rebecca was captured by the hotel's exterior camera. It seemed she'd realized the gossip earlier was a sham. Dragging her to her feet, her whole body oozed disappointment.
ラミー君大変。レベッカさんが戻ってきた。
マジ早すぎるよ。
SNS の画像がガセだってバレたみたいだな。まあ、あんな適当なコラージュじゃ無理もないけどよ。
Hamio grumbled. When I checked the post, there were countless scathing comments complaining that it was a groundless rumor and a heavily edited picture. Rebecca must have seen the post and realized the scandal was nothing but hogwash. At this rate, Rom and Rebecca were going to bump into each other inside her room. Sally, keep working on the safe lock.
サリー、金庫のロック解除を続けて。
Now, I could only put my faith in Sally's skills.
お姉ちゃん、任せといてよ。
Her vigorous typing sped up even more. Oh, interesting how it changes. Before long, Rebecca arrived at the 5th floor via the elevator.
サリー、金庫のロック解除はどう？
もうちょっと。
ラミー君、あと少しだからサリーを信じて待って。
やっべ、足音聞こえてきたし。
サリー、頑張って。
Rebecca had finally reached the door to her room. We'd run out of time.
よし、金庫のロック解除したよ。
ラミー君急いで。レベッカさんはもう部屋の前まで来てる。
よし、鍵を手に入れた。
Escape from the door, escape from the window, hide in the bathroom. Oh, if we go to the window, they'll see us, I guess. We can't escape from the door. Hide in the bathroom seems like a bad idea. Hmm.
とりあえず記録しておけ。
これでいいか。
I mean, normally I say go out the window, but the window's facing the street. Let's try hide in the bathroom.
バスルームに隠れて。
え、それマジで？
このままじゃ見つかっちゃうでしょ。とにかくどこかに隠れなきゃ。
そりゃそうだけど。ドアが開いた。とりあえずバスルームに隠れるよ。
Leaving me with those words, Rama hung up. Sometime later, we learned on the news that Ram had been discovered by Rebecca, then arrested by the police. Ah, okay, whoops.
どこに行くつもりだ？
I guess it's out the window then. I mean,
これで
where else
問
is he
題
gonna
ありま
go?
せんか？わかった。アッシュの兄貴、ちゃんと迎えに来てくれよ。
He hung up on the call, and I no longer had any idea how Ram was faring. Rebecca slotted her key into the door. The next moment, she walked inside. Did everything go as planned? I imagined the nightmare scenario where Rebecca and Ram saw each other inside the room, and color drained from my face. Ram was in a room on the 5th floor of a hotel with no way out. Could he truly escape from this dead end? I could only trust in him and pray for his safety. July 18th, 2028, 1:35 a.m. Condo living room. Yeah, this definitely feels like it's the same team that did the previous Red game, Our World Has Ended, which I really liked. Again, that's why we're playing this one, because I really liked that game, and I didn't realize they had another U.S. release. So this is cool stuff. This is actually kind of better than Our World Has Ended. Our World Has Ended took a long time to start up and get to the plot. This one, just right away, is super interesting. A while later, Gib, Hamiel, and Camus returned to the condo.
やれやれ。男と二人でミラノを散歩なんて、全然心が躍らない夜だったよ。
警察もうろついてましたし、ちょっとヒヤッとしましたね。
だが、 特に見とがめられなかったはずだ。ラミーとアッシュはまだ。
はい、実はレベッカさんが予想よりも早く帰ってきてしまって。
I'd kept an eye on the camera ever since, but Rom hadn't appeared in front of Rebecca's room even once. Something must have gone wrong after all. Just as unease began to rise in my chest, I heard a bike coming to a stop outside the condo.
お待たせー。
When I saw Rom and Ash walk in, my heart relaxed at once. I could breathe easy now.
よかった。無事だったか。
それで、例のブツは？
じゃーん、こちらでございます。
Rom held up his hand proudly. In his grip was a key with a silver tag.
安心して。現場でこいつが外れるのを確認したから、ちゃんと本物のキーだよ。
When I took another look at Rom, I realized that he'd already been freed from his handcuffs. Yes, our innocent little girl plotted a heist and stole a key.
よくやった。
やれやれ。ヒヤヒヤさせやがって。
よかった。無事で。レベッカさんが部屋に入っていったから捕まったんじゃないかと心配してたの。
へへ。隣が空き部屋なのは分かってたからさ。窓を伝って隣に行ってから逃げたんだ。さあ皆さん、お手をどうぞ。
Rom offered his hand as if inviting us to a dance. Conversely, Hamiel scowled as he held out his wrist to the younger boy.
やめてくれ、気色悪い。ほら、さっさと鍵を外せ。
情緒がないな。
Rom held the key close to the handcuffs. Then, there was a beep that seemed to signal the release of the lock, followed by the handcuff opening and falling to the ground.
サリーもサリーも。
順番だ。
One after another, Rom removed our cuffs. At long last, we were released from the trackers. Breathing a sigh of relief, I rubbed my wrist. Camo began picking up the numerous handcuffs on the ground.
それでこれ、どうしましょうか。ここにあると追いかけられてしまいますよね。
こうすればいい。
Ash gathered up one pair of handcuffs, tied the two halves together with a cord, then leaned out of the window. He stared motionlessly down the road. When a semi-truck happened to pass by, he flung the handcuffs at it. Drawing a perfect arc across the air, the handcuffs landed on top of the truck.
これでミラノから今晩中に脱出したように見えるだろう。他のも別の行き先のトラックに乗せればいい。
Ash narrowed his eyes in the darkness and tossed the others one by one. He made quick work of everything. The handcuffs landed on trucks with all kinds of province codes on the number plates, like Florence or Rome, and faded into the horizon. The final pair flew into a nearby river. There was a distant splash as the cuffs sank into the water.
これでいい。
さすが兄貴。おほー、バラバラに逃げたと思わせるということですね。
ああ。追跡画面を見れば、提案を無視して逃げ出したとすぐわかるだろう。で、鍵を盗んだ1名だけが川に投げ捨てたと思わせられればいい。
だがここに止まっているのはバレている。手がかりを求めてここへ来る前にチェックアウトはしないとな。
もうやだ。疲れた。一歩も動きたくない。
これから逃亡するのは、さすがにしんどいですね。居眠り運転になりそうですし。
こうなると思って、さっきこのコンドミニアムの管理人に裁判中の昔の女房が俺を探しに来るだろうから、チェックアウトしたと伝えてくれって言っておいたよ。一応金も握らせておいた。うまく追い払ってくれたら追加で払うって言ってあるから、多分大丈夫だろう。
さすがプロですね。
これぐらいは当然だ。
だが信じるだろうか。万が一強行突破されたら。
じゃあひとまずこいつを近くの別のホテルのベランダに投げとこうぜ。 深夜にチェックアウトして移動した感じになると思うけど。
Saying that, Rom took something from his pocket. They were his own handcuffs he'd removed to test the key.
なるほど。1名だけホテルを移動したように見せかけるのか。確かにこの中の誰かが取りそうな手段だな。
だろ？
Without a second's delay, Rom stuffed the handcuffs into his pocket and leapt out of the window. He used the balconies as platforms to reach an aged hotel 3 buildings over. When he arrived, he threw the cuffs through an open window. In a flash, he was back on our balcony. He bravely made audible footsteps, or he barely made audible footsteps or any other noise during the process, graceful like a cat.
すごい、パルクールの選手みたい。ラミー君、すごい身軽なんだね。
大怪盗ですから。
これで筋書きはできたな。仲間割れして疲れた一人は別の宿に、他の連中は夜のうちに街を出たっていうな。
ああ。では、そろそろ寝るとしよう。休める時に休まなければ。逃亡生活はきついぞ。
あんたに仕切られなくても分かってるよ。
Gibbs' words were a cue for everyone to scatter to their beds they'd picked when we first checked in.
お姉ちゃん、もう寝よう。
As she put away the laptop she'd used for her hacking, Sally called me to follow her. I stared at her, this cute girl who committed crimes without a shred of guilt. I sighed but followed, making it through another night of life on the run. Chapter 3, Breakthrough.
あ、来た来た。もうどこ行ってたのよ。ずっと待ち合わせ場所で待ってたんだからね。
現状を記録するぞ。
Okay,
Well,
well, I think that's a good place to stop it. So, why don't we stop there? This is meowmurai.
これで問題ないか。
Despera Drops.
では、
running on
後ほど
Nintendo
合流
Switch
しましょう。
2. Yeah, I'm very impressed with this visual novel. Again, I
Despera
really had no
Drops.
idea what we were getting into. I didn't look at the reviews or anything. I just knew that I liked Our World Had Ended, which was the same developer. So, yeah, I'm very happy with this. Hopefully people take notice of it. I don't know. It didn't seem like it was that popular. But maybe somebody will run into this at some point in time and try it out for themselves. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.